everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my list of my top 19 most anticipated new releases of 2019. Now I know this video is a little bit late, it's already almost the end of January, so a few of the books on my list are actually out already. I just don't own them yet. And I just haven't had a chance to be able to sit down and film this. The weather has been horrible the last couple weeks, so much snow and cloud and rain, and it's just been hell for filming. But today it seems to be okay. It's really snowy out, but the sun is kind of shining, so we're gonna work with it. Without further ado, let's just get on to my list. So I'm not going to be putting these in order of like number one is my most anticipated book. I'm going to be putting these in order of publication dates. So the earliest published in 2019 to the latest published in 2019. You'll be able to tell from my reactions which ones are my favorite. The first book that I'm looking forward to coming out in 2019 is The Winter of the Witch by Katherine Arden. So this is the third and final book in the Winter Night trilogy. So the first book was The Bear and the Nightingale, the second book was The Girl in the Tower, and then now it's going to be The Winter of the Witch. And I am so excited to finally get my hands on this book. I've been looking forward to it, not for very long, because I didn't read The Bear and the Nightingale until just this past December, but I instantly fell in love with it. I devoured it in a day. I read it, and then I read Girl in the Tower in the day as well, so I'm very much looking forward to the end of this series. It's become one of my absolute favorites, and I'm so looking forward to reading it when I do finally get my hands on it, because it is out. It's out. I just haven't read it yet, and it makes me sad. But hopefully in the next little while I'll be able to get my hands on it and finally be able to read it. The Winter of the Witch came out on January 8th. So the next book that I'm most looking forward to coming out in 2019 is The Gilded Walls by Roshani Chokshi. So I haven't read any of Roshani Chokshi's work yet, but I follow her on Twitter and Instagram and I find her hilarious. I've got one of her books here, The Star-Touched Queen, which I just haven't gotten around to reading yet. But I've heard really good things about it and she just makes me so happy. I love her. But The Gilded Wolves is a book set in, I believe, 1920s Paris. And it's about a huge group of people from all different areas, different walks of life, different occupations, genders, all kinds of different things coming together to go on basically a treasure hunt. She said she was trying to rewrite National Treasure, and it makes me really happy to hear that, because those are like my guilty pleasure movies. I love those kind of movies. National Treasure, The Mummy, that kind of thing, top notch. So I'm very looking forward to reading this. This one came out on January 15th. The next book that I'm most looking forward to coming out in 2019 was Stain by A.G. Howard. It came out on January 15th, and it is basically a retelling of The Princess and the Pea, which I have never heard of in YA or even adult fiction, hearing a retelling of Princess and the Pea. That was one of my favorite stories when I was little, and like you guys know I love a good fairy tale retelling, so I'm really looking forward to this. Like I said, it came out on January 15th. I haven't heard anything else about it really, but other than people enjoying it, so I'm looking forward to it. The next book that I'm looking forward to coming out in 2019 is Dragon Pearl by Yoon Leigh, which came out on January 15th as well. Dragon Pearl tells the story of Min, who is told by her mother her entire life not to use her fox magic, same with the rest of her family. But Min has always aspired to go off like her brother did and join the Space Forces and to travel around and see the Thousand Worlds. But one day she finds out that her brother has basically defected and abandoned his battle cruiser in search of the Dragon Pearl. And Min doesn't believe it. She can't believe that he would abandon his cruiser, so she takes off on a whirlwind adventure to try and figure out what happened to her brother. In the synopsis it mentions that it's got pirates, that it's got ghosts, that it's got gamblers, and it looks like to be such a fun read, and I'm really looking forward to it. Number 5, you guys know I am stupidly obsessed with Nikolai from the Grishaverse, so obviously probably my most anticipated book of this year is King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. I've had it pre-ordered forever, and I'm so looking forward to getting my hands on it. Nikolai is my favorite character in the entire Grishaverse. I don't care what anybody says. And when I found out he's getting his own duology, I almost cried. I lost my mind. And I'm just eagerly anticipating finally getting my hands on this. It comes out on January 29th, and it takes place after the events of the Shadow and Bone trilogy and the Six of Crows duology, so they recommend that you read them before you give King of Scars a go, because it's got some major spoilers in it. But it was, these 5 books were like my favorite books I read this summer. I was late to the game getting a hold of the Grishaverse and finally reading it, but it was so worth it. Oh my god, it was so good. And I cannot wait to see what happens in the next 2 books. The next book that I'm most looking forward to coming out in 2019 is Onshantae by Gita Trelease, and it comes out on February 5th. So Onshantae is set in 1789 Paris. The story follows our main character Camille, who after her parents die, she has to struggle to take care of her younger sister and to deal with her rebellious brother. And to do so, she uses la magie, which is petty magic. She uses it to turn scraps of metal into coins, and etc., things like that, to keep her family afloat. But one day her brother runs off with all of her money, and the coins that she's been turning from scrap metal are starting to turn back, and her magic isn't working, and so she has to use the dark magic that her mother forbade her from using in order to set herself up as a member of the court of Versailles. And she has to infiltrate the world of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. After getting really deep into her character and struggling to push past her hatred of the aristocracy while living in the world of Versailles and using her magic in order to win card games and gambling and all that kind of things, she ends up getting thrown right into the world of the French Revolution and is just trying to make her way through while taking care of her family. The story sounds amazing. I'm really looking forward to it. I love the French Revolution in history. It's one of my favorite periods of history, and I think you guys know I love magic, but I think this is such a unique idea. I think it's a great idea, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. Next up is another book that have been anticipating for a long time, and that is Bloodwitch by Susan Dennard, which is the 3rd book in her Witchland series. It takes place after the events of Windwitch, which came out a couple of years ago, and I read a couple of years ago, and I absolutely loved. It comes out on February 14th, and I am just so looking forward to it. The Witchland series has quickly become one of my absolute favorites. I kind of forgot about it until this past December, but then I finally read Sight Witch, her little prequel novella, and it just got me right back into it. I'm so ready for Bloodwitch to come out, and I'm just so excited to see what she's going to do with this world. The next book that I'm most looking forward to coming out in 2019 is Four Dead Queens by Astrid Scholte, which comes out on February 26th. I hadn't heard a whole lot about Four Dead Queens, but I heard Haley mention it, Haley in Bookland, on her book haul that just came out recently, and so I went and took a look, and it looks fantastic. It seems to be set in a world where there are 4 queens that rule 4 different quarters of this land. But the quarters are completely closed off. Nobody's allowed to venture in and out of quarters. They're supposed to stay where they are and have no interaction with other quarters, and the queens just rule together. Each quarter has a different kind of like faction type situation, kind of like the Hunger Games. One of them is set for like passion and entertainment and like creativity. One of them's intellectual, one of them is agriculture, one of them is like communications, technology, that kind of thing. But the story follows the main character Carolee, who is a thief and who steals a communications tablet, and on the tablet she actually witnesses a recording of each 4 queens dying. She must team up with the person that she stole the communications disc with, somebody from the technology, obviously, quarter, and they have to work together to find out what happened, and it takes them back to that man's first job to begin with. So it looks like it's going to be fast-paced, high intensity, and it seems really interesting. I haven't really read anything like that, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with it. The next book I'm most looking forward to reading in 2019 is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This book comes out on February 26th, and it is probably one of my highest anticipated books of this year. Priory of the Orange Tree is another epic fantasy. It's like over 800 pages. It's got dragons, it's got kingdoms, and it seems like it's a wonderful epic fantasy. It's got LGBTQ characters, it's got female romances, which I'm always excited for, and I'm very excited to see how this is going to go. From the reviews that I've seen, it looks like it's getting incredible reviews, and I'm always up for another massive high fantasy series. Those are my absolute favorites, so I'm really looking forward to reading The Priory of the Orange Tree. The next book that I'm really looking forward to reading in the year of 2019 is The Return of the Thief by Meghan Whalen Turner. This is the 6th and final book in the Queen's Thief series, which I read over the summer. And I'm really sad, but I'm also really excited to get a hold of it. It comes out on March 19th, which is like a week before my birthday, which is exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. I love the entire series. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with Jen and the rest of the characters, to see if they all come together or if it's gonna branch off into another section. I don't think so, since it's the last book, but either way. This has been a wonderful historical series that has been set in a world based off of ancient Greece and ancient Persia, and it's just tickled my little history-loving heart. And I'm sad but happy, very bittersweet about this ending, but I'm really looking forward to reading Return of the Thief. The next book that I'm really looking forward to reading in 2019 is Sherwood by Megan Spooner. Megan Spooner wrote the book Hunted, which I also don't have, but I've been looking forward to reading as well, which is like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. This is a retelling of Robin Hood, but in this retelling Robin dies and Maid Marian ends up becoming the new Robin Hood, and I am so looking forward to this. I used to love the Disney Robin Hood. It made me really happy to read that type of story, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this. Again, I haven't seen a Robin Hood retelling in a long time, so I'm very looking forward to this. The next book that I'm really looking forward to reading in the year of 2019 is Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan, which comes out on April 2nd. I was very kindly given a copy to review through NetGalley from the publishers of Wicked Saints, an e-copy, so I'm currently reading it right now and it is amazing. I'll have a full review out on Goodreads as soon as I finish it, so keep looking at that if you'd like to see more thoughts from me about it, but so far, so good. Wicked Saints is the first book in a series called the Something Dark and Holy series, and it is just a twisted and dark and gothic fantasy that I am just living for. It again brings characters together from different walks of life during a very much war-torn world, and seeing how these different people can work together in order to stop the war. And so far it is incredible. I'm loving the magic system. They use these tomes that, or spell books and tomes that you rip a page out to use for magic, but then there's also another type of magic that communicates directly with the gods in this world, so that's really cool as well. It brings in an aspect of mythology, which I always love, magic, fantasy, dark fantasy, which I always love, and I'm really looking forward to finishing it, and it comes out on April 2nd. The next book that I'm most looking forward to coming out in 2019 is Descendant of the Crane by Joan. Descendant of the Crane comes out on April 2nd. It tells the story of Princess Hesina of Yen, who never wants to be queen. She's always dreaming of a insignificant life, but one day her beloved father actually dies. She believes he was killed, and she is all of a sudden thrust into the world of being the queen of one of the largest kingdoms around. She's surrounded by people who are deceptive and deceiving and political and wanting everything for their own gain. Any of them could be a suspect in her father's murder. Her advisors are wanting her to blame the neighboring kingdom that have been hankering for war, but she doesn't know what to do. So what she ends up doing is enlisting the help of a soothsayer, which is illegal and could lead to her being sentenced to death because magic has been outlawed for centuries. After hearing what the soothsayer has to say, she ends up teaming up with Akita, who is a brilliant investigator who is also a convicted criminal with his own dark past, and they have to work together to find out what happened to the king. And it looks like an incredible book. I'm really looking forward to it, again, like most of the books on this list. But I love books with political intrigue and magic and mystery. Those are, and unlikely pairings. They always end up being really highly rated from me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this is going to go. The next book I'm most looking forward to reading in 2019 is Finale by Stephanie Garber, which is the third book in the Caraval series. Finale comes out on May 7th, and it is the final installment in the Caraval series. It is the finale, funnily enough. And after the end of Legendary, which I won't mention it because of spoilers, I am so looking forward to seeing what's going to happen next. There's a huge plot twist, huge cliffhanger at the end of the last book, and I just cannot wait. I love this series so much. I've heard it get a little bit of hate and very mixed reviews, but I just adore it. I absolutely do. I think it's so whimsical, I think it's so magical, and it makes me so happy to be able to dive right into it soon. The next book that I'm most looking forward to reading in 2019 is We Hunt the Flame by Hafsah Fiazal. We Hunt the Flame comes out on May 14th, and I've been looking forward to this book for over a year. I started following Hafsah on Twitter a long time ago, back when I found a thread of hers where she was talking about like how the publishing world really works, and I was really intrigued by her writing, and I found out she had a book coming out, so I was really excited, and I've been following this for a long time, so I'm very, very excited to see it finally coming to fruition. It's an epic fantasy set in like a world inspired by ancient Arabia, which I haven't seen, which also makes me very happy. I love ancient history, and I love seeing people draw on ancient history and ancient landscapes in their fantasy series. I think it works very well for the genre, and I'm so anticipating this. I think it's going to be fantastic, and I cannot wait to finally get my hands on this book. The next book that I'm most looking forward to reading in 2019 is Sorcerers Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, which comes out on June 4th. Sorcerers Thorns is the second book I've heard of by Margaret Rogerson. Her first, it was An Enchantment of Ravens, but I know that this isn't a related story. It's another standalone, which makes me happy. I haven't had a chance to read An Enchantment of Ravens yet, but I'm getting there. I know I'm going to love it, so I can't wait to read this one. Sorcerers Thorns follows a main character, Elizabeth, who has known her entire life that sorcerers are evil. She was orphaned as a child, and she was raised as a foundling in the Great Library, where she's been surrounded by these grimoires, which sorcerers use for their magic, and is well aware of what can happen when this magic is used for wrong. And she's hoping to one day be able to join a elite group of kind of like police that monitor and make sure that these books never get misused. Grimoires in this world are like spell books that kind of come to life as a type of monster, which is awesome. Sounds really cool. But anyway, one day Elizabeth is in the library, and after an act of sabotage, one of the worst grimoires gets unleashed onto the world. And when Elizabeth is desperately trying to intervene, she ends up being implicated for the crime and taken to the leaders of the kingdom to face punishment. She ends up having to turn to her sworn enemy, Nathaniel Thorne, who is a sorcerer, and ends up being drawn into a centuries-old conspiracy that could bring about not only the fall of the great libraries, but the fall of the entire kingdom. This sounds so cool. It reminds me kind of Strange the Dreamer in the sense that, like, the library setting, but definitely not in the rest of the series. But I can sense some enemies to lovers trope peeking in there, considering it's called Sorcerers Thorns and, you know, Nathaniel Thorne. Kind of jump into conclusions, but I'm so okay with it. I've heard a lot of really good things about Margaret Rogerson's writing. Again, I have Enchantment of Ravens, but I haven't read it yet. So hopefully I'll read that soon, and then I'll be even more ready for Sorcerers Thorns when it comes out in June. So the last 3 books on my list are books that aren't coming out until late 2019. They don't even, some of them don't even have titles, some of them don't have covers, one of them doesn't even have a release date yet, just an estimated date at the end of 2019, but these are probably 3 of my most anticipated books. The first is the untitled 4th book in the 3 Dark Crowns series by Kendar Blake. It is the 4th and final book in the series, and it's set to come out on September 3rd. It doesn't even have a title yet, but I don't care. I devoured the first 3 books in this series over New Year's, and I just cannot wait. I don't want to wait until September. I don't know. I can't. I bought the novella set, The Queens of Fenneburn, just a little while ago, so I'll kind of, hopefully I'll wait until like halfway through, then I'll read that, and it might be able to get me going until September, but either way, it's gonna be a long wait, but I'm very much looking forward to it. The next book is the 4th book in the Trials of Apollo series by Rick Riordan, which is The Tyrant's Tomb, which is set to come out on September 26th. Again, so excited. I love anything Rick Riordan puts out. His Trials of Apollo series, I think, is one of his best. I find it so nice to be reading from the point of view of a god, like a fallen god, because that happened quite a bit in Greek mythology. I find it fascinating to get that point of view that you don't get in most of Rick Riordan's books, which are mainly focusing on demigods who don't have that air of like arrogance or massive amounts of power that the gods always have. Especially seeing Apollo like without his powers but still having that mindset, it makes it very fascinating to read, and especially as he's growing and learning what it's like to be without powers and kind of gaining empathy for humanity. It really makes the series a lot more unique, I think, in my mind, compared to the rest of his books. but I'm very highly looking forward to reading Tyrant's Tomb. And finally, the last book on this list is Crescent City, which is the new series coming out by Sarah J. Maas, which, as you know, is a fave. This is an entirely new series, not set in Throne of Glass or Corn of Thorns and Roses worlds, but it's set in an entirely new world in which humans are kind of struggling to live with a hierarchy of demons and angels and shifters and all manner of different mythological creatures that all live in the same world. And the story follows a character named Bryce Quinlan who, after witnessing the death of her best friend, ends up teaming up with a warrior angel to try and save the city. And again, sounds right up my alley. It's Sarah J. Maas. It's gonna have some good romance. It's going to be action-packed and high intensity and everything that I love. I think the fact that she's branching out a little bit from just the plain fae and fairy stories is going to be really interesting. She's going to be focusing on different mythologies and different types of mythological creatures, and I think having that variety is going to be a really fresh look. But it's Sarah J. Maas, so I'm gonna love it. It doesn't even have a release date yet. It says late 2019 as the estimated release date. It doesn't have a cover. I don't even know if that's the title, but it's gonna be incredible and I absolutely cannot wait. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. That was my top 19 most anticipated new releases of 2019 list. If there are any books on this list that you are also anticipating or books that I didn't mention on my list, please let me know in the comments below. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you're new here. I put out new videos every Wednesday and Friday, and I hope you guys have a lovely day. Bye bye.